At 16, he wrote, "Marry me someday" in my yearbook last weekend. I found that yearbook while packing for our honeymoon. As their 12 years, 3 breakups, and 2 different states later, even our wedding planner cried when I showed her Noah, and I weren't high school sweethearts, parrot we were barely even friends. He was the quiet guy in my AP Caintic class who helped me understand molecular structures while I pretended not to notice how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. We spoke maybe 20 times that entire year. On the last day of junior year, we all passed around yearbooks in the cafeteria. When mine came back, I flipped through pages of "Hi, just have a great summer" and generic "You are so sweet" messages until I reached his neat handwriting in the margin. Chemistry wasn't just about elements for me. Maybe someday I'll be brave enough to tell you that, or maybe I'll just marry you someday and tell you then, minus Noah P. I never mentioned it. By senior year, he had transferred to another school and we lost touch completely. College took me to Boston while he stayed in Chicago. I dated other guys, paired a musician who composed songs about my freckles, a law student who planned our hypothetical wedding on our 3rd date. Each relationship taught me something, but none of them felt completely right. 8 years after high school, I was scrolling through Inscration during my lunch break when a familiar name appeared in my people you may know. Noah Peterson had started following a cooking account I loved. On impulse, I sent a message. "Is this the same Noah who once promised to marry me in my yearbook?" His response came 2 minutes later. "I can't believe you remembered that. I was so sure you'd never seen it." We started talking, paired first on Instagram and then texts, then nightly phone calls that stretched until 2 a.m. He was working as an environmental engineer in Seattle. I was managing a nonprofit in Boston. The distance should have been an obstacle, but somehow it wasn't. After 3 months of virtual connection, he flew to Boston for a weekend, standing in the airport. I recognized him immediately, paying the same crinkly-eyed smile now attached to a grown man with confidence his teenage self had never possessed. "You are exactly how I remembered you," he said, hugging me like we'd never been apart. 6 months later, I transferred to our organization's Seattle office. A year after that, during a hike overlooking the Pacific, he got down on one knee with a ring and the actual yearbook page parrot, which he'd carefully torn out all those years ago. "I meant it then, and I mean it now," he said. "I just didn't think it would take 12 years. Our wedding last month wasn't extravagant, parent, just 60 people in a renovated warehouse with string lights and too much cake. What made it special was the story we shared during our vows, about patience, timing, and a 16-year-old boy brave enough to put an impossible hope on paper. I didn't find the whole yearbook until we were packing for our honeymoon to Japan, flipping through it for nostalgia's sake. I found another note from Noah I'd never seen before, hidden in the back pages. "P.S. If you are reading this and thinking I am weird, I get it. But on the off chance we do end up together someday, save this yearbook. It'll make a great story. Sometimes the universe has a plan so specific that you couldn't fight it if you tried. And sometimes the most romantic love stories aren't about grand gestures or perfect timing, but about 2 people who find their way back to each other despite all the reasons they shouldn't." Noah is sleeping next to me as I type this on our flight. He still helps me understand complicated things. I still pretend not to notice when he looks at me. Some things never change, parrot, they just get better with time.